Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs on this Monday morning here on Golf Channel. You can also listen on PGA Tour Radio. That is Channel 92 on Sirius XM. I am Gary Williams, and this program is always brought to you by Century Insurance. They've got a relationship with the USGA that is deep, that is invested, and we appreciate their investment in this program. Golf Pride, I saw some players coming down the stretch. What grips were they trusting? All of them were trusting Golf Pride, including that new Align Max. I saw that on a player contending to win the U.S. Open. Of course, Peter Millar, when it comes to apparel and refining performance, luxury, and style, nobody's done it better for more than 2 decades than they have. And that is why it's been all that I've worn for the past 15 years. And of course, Pinehurst, one of the anchor sites for the United States Golf Association. They have the new cottages at number 8. The clubhouse and restaurant at Pinehurst number 10 is coming. Pinehurst number 11 is on the horizon. And one final note about Pinehurst, this was announced late last week. 2029, they're going to do the double again. Let's Play 2, the U.S. Women's Open, and then the U.S. Men's Open. They did it in 2014. The men went first, and then the women, they're going to flip-flop it, so the women will have the first chance on number 2, and then it'll be the men. That'll be 2029. They are one of the few places that can do just that. All right, we have an hour. Normally, over the course of this hour, you are going to see and hear the opinions of others. Not today. This is the dream format for me. Me, and more of me. Actually, it was not so much that we planned this, is that there were a lot of people that we were trying to get on, and because of what transpired late last night, there's a lot of travel issues. We'll get to all those guests over the course of the week, tomorrow and into Wednesday. I've got enough here to fill. I would like Rex and Ryan to push back their show an hour, and they could maybe start at 10 if they would like, because there's plenty to get to. You know, many people know that I wanted to be good at things, and yeah, I had the dexterity to do things, throw a ball and get on a pair of skis and ride a skateboard and play tennis and hit golf shots. And then I hit my athletic peak at 10. And then it was time to look in another direction. And what I found is that looking at performance of people who do things in these really, really high level, intense environments was very entertaining, was very compelling, and I wanted to follow it. I wanted to cover it. And so, and I may be dating myself here as I start to share with you some of the memories that I saw in person, like Joe Namath bootlegging at Yale Bowl into the end zone for a touchdown. That was after they had won the Super Bowl a couple years earlier. I remember Franz Klammer with his hair on fire in Innisbrook, going down the downhill, and it was Bob Beatty and Frank Gifford on the call. And I'm going, that's insane. How did he do that? And then the following year, I happened to be sitting in Yankee Stadium, and I was a wee man with my dad, and I saw Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs in 3 swings. And I'm like, this is a fun way to go through life. And then a couple years later, my dad took me to the U.S. Open for the first time in 1980. And I shared this last Monday at Oakmont about following Tom Weiskopf and seeing him, a major champion, shoot 63 in the first round, and you're going, my gosh, you rarely see that stuff. Those are just a sampling of the things that I've experienced, and that was when I was young. And that was the impetus for me to say, somehow, some way, I'd love to follow all of this stuff, because to see athletes, and that's really what reality television is, for all the Real Housewives of Newark and Orange County and Sheboygan, at the end of the day, the human drama of athletic competition, that's reality. That's the greatest reality show that we have. So yesterday, to see a guy in his 236th start, and he's managed to keep the lights on. He's managed to keep a job on the best tour in the world. And by the way, that job was in peril in the middle of last year, because JJ Spaun got to the month of June, and you know where he stood in the FedEx Cup standings? Outside the top 180. And as we see the workforce shrinking on the PGA Tour, and you're going, my gosh, he might be relegated. He might be back on the Korn Ferry Tour. And then he had a pretty good week at the 3M, and nobody's paying attention. other than us seam heads, and you're going, who are guys who are hovering around the 125 who need a good week at the Wyndham Championship to go, and they can exhale and go, I got employment for next year. And he did that, and he finished 98th. Didn't cause a lot of attention, didn't cause much of a stir, but he did it. And that right there was an example of somebody who showed resolve and grits and chops. And as Bill Raftery likes to say, onions. He did those things. But that was the Wyndham Championship right up the road at Sedgefield Country Club. And it's not like the world was watching, but the world was watching yesterday. So for all the heroics and the amazing stuff that we have watched, we actually got to watch it again during a weather delay that NBC, you're going, what are they doing slapping the third round of the 2008 US Open right in the middle of this weather delay? It was genius, because what we saw was him make two eagles coming in, and you're going, my gosh, this is the greatest rain delay I think I've ever watched. And even though I've already seen it, I can't believe he might make that putt again on 18 to force the playoff with Rocco. So we kind of expected that, as Dan Hicks said on that call. Expect anything different? What I did not expect yesterday late from JJ Spaun, 34 years of age, modestly recruited at the college level, went to San Diego State, and he wound up becoming, a conference player of the year. And he toiled. When I say toiled, it means that he was managing to kind of do what you got to do, which is keep your job, keep your card, and move forward. And all along, do the things that are the most important things, as my old buddy Charlie Reimer used to say, put meat in the pot, pay the bills, put food on the table. So when JJ Spaun bogeyed 5 of the first 6 holes yesterday, you're going, what a great story. He had a really nice week. I'll remember this US Open for the guy who eventually wins, and then I will point out that I remember him because he shot 66 in the opening round. He didn't make a bogey. He met with the media every day because he was hovering around the lead, and he was in the second to last group teeing off yesterday. But when you shoot 40 going out, it's over. It should be over, because over the last 2 decades, nobody has shot 40 on the PGA Tour in the final round of an event and gone on to win, let alone win the US Open. And then JJ Spaun, after getting some bad breaks, didn't necessarily start to get good breaks, but he made breaks for himself. So he did things late yesterday that if you substituted Rory or Scheffler or Tiger or Phil or anybody else who is kind of captivated and held your attention watching golf, consuming golf, whether it be for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you go, just another chapter for Tiger. But it was JJ Spaun who was doing these things. And when he makes the long putt on 12, you're going, wow, he's hanging around. We thought he was dead, and he's still got life, and it's jammed up, and we got a mosh pit literally on the ground, and we got a mosh pit on the first page of the leaderboard. And then he hits a really good tee shot on 16, makes a solid par there. And then he decides he's going to hit the drive of his life on 17. See, JJ Spaun and his profile and his record of accomplishment up until this point would not suggest that he would be the one in fading light and a lot of humidity and the ball not traveling, hit an absolute seed that went right by the hole. And then he 2-putts, and all of a sudden, JJ Spaun is the solo leader standing on the 18th tee at Oakmont. And you can go down your own memory bank and think about Angel Cabrera in 2007. And you can think about Dustin Johnson thinking that maybe a penalty is hanging in the balance, and the tee shots that they struck. And let me tell you something. The tee shot that JJ Spaun struck on the 18th tee yesterday takes no back seat to Cabrera in 07 or Dustin Johnson in 16. And then he gets up on the green and he said, I wasn't really looking at the scoreboard. I could kind of tell by people's body language and kind of the acoustic noise that was hanging in the air. And one little side note, Pittsburgh, you are something. All that rain, I would have been back on my couch, hot shower. I would have had some sweats on. I would have been so comfy, cozy, watching from the confines of my home, but not you people. You were going to lean in and you were going to see this thing finish. And what you saw was one of the moments that will stand up. I don't care that it was a guy who had only won one time in his career on the PGA Tour. And he embodies what we all should periodically think about. That the idea that, life is a race, and I accept that. I accept that that can be true. And I think that that's a good way for us to think about the drive and the motivation and what we all need to do to feel like today can be a better day. Today can be a day where I can be better. And success is always under construction. But here's about the race in life. It's only your race. 34 years of age, he's looking around and he's going, my gosh, you know what, I've made decent money, but who knows? Maybe 2024 and I'm in peril and maybe I don't even make it into the FedEx Cup playoffs, which he didn't last year. But here's what JJ Spaun did, and what I hope that we all, when we're kind of doubting ourselves, do. You're not running against anybody else. It's your race. Just keep running. And if you do that, you never know that things can get brighter and things can improve. And that JJ Spaun, after getting into a playoff at the Players, and you're going, nice story. I'll kind of remember him at the end of the year. You're going to remember him now? Because JJ Spaun did something yesterday that only one other man has done in the history of U.S. Opens at Oakmont. His name, Hogan. Birdieing the last two holes to win a U.S. Open on that beast, on a golf course that is a veritable rock fight. And we'll get to the USGA and why I think they succeeded in what it was that they were trying to do, and they were dealt a challenging hand themselves. So at the end of the day, when we had all these guys mashed up at the top of the leaderboard, it's JJ Spaun, 34, lightly recruited. And somebody you're going, yeah, I know a little bit about him. And an hour later, he's up on the live from desk, and you got Paul McGinley begging him to maybe falsify his passport so he can play for Europe because he's so smitten with JJ Spaun, and why wouldn't you be? When it was over, and when you win an event like this, you do a lot of media. Well, one of the people that he sat down with was 5 Club's contributor, the host of The Starter that precedes us here. If you listen on the radio side on Sirius XM, Taylor Zarzour. Here is their conversation.
JJ Spaun is the U.S. Open champion. Before we discuss what it took to have the biggest moment of your life, happy Father's Day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What a great day.
How about that? You had Melody, Emerson, and Violet all with you out there on the golf course. And I understand you're not on a lot of sleep as you just won the U.S. Open. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a handful having the kids and wife with me every week, but they don't obviously come every week. But I've been jokingly saying, I got Oakmont to play, and then I got Oakmont back at the hotel. So I'm kind of used to it. But yeah, my youngest one got a little stomach bug, and was up at 3 a.m. trying to help her and my wife, settle her down. So it's just dad duties kicking in, and it was the start to a chaotic day.
You're right, because when you hit the flagstick on the second hole, I think a lot of us are saying the golf gods are against JJ today. You made 5 straight fives. That looked like a Taylor scorecard, not a JJ scorecard. 5 over through 6. Are you thinking, I've lost my shot, or were you able to still stay in the moment?
Yeah, I was, when the wheels were falling off, I was definitely, unraveling, and my mind was, chasing around, and I just felt like I couldn't make a par. And, I felt like I was running out of time. There's not many birdie holes, but when that rain delay came, that's kind of what changed it for me.
Yeah, and so you're 4 down at the restart. Did you have a different mindset when you came back out there?
Well, I kind of leaned on an experience at the Players where the same thing happened to me, where I wasn't struggling as bad, but I lost the lead on Sunday. Had a 4-hour delay, came back out, rallied to get into the playoff with Rory. So my coach and caddy, they're like telling me, this is a good thing. Like, we've been through this. You had this reset before, and you just gotta trust it. And so I kind of flipped a switch, I guess you can say, during the rain delay, and came back, swinging, and they told me if you were told on Monday that you'd be 4 shots back going into the back nine on Sunday, you would take that, wouldn't you? And I said, yeah, of course, because anything can happen on the back nine at a major championship. So, kind of flipped the switch and, started firing on all cylinders.
What are you thinking as you prepare for that 64-foot, 5-inch putt? And how much did Viktor Hovland help you, given he was right outside your mark?
Yeah, it was great. Having him just right there, it kind of reminded me of my first tour win at Valero Texas Open, where I had to mark my ball because the player I was playing with had to hit out of the bunker basically on the same line on the last hole on Sunday, and he kind of gave me a teach on what I needed for this long 40-foot lag putt that I had, and saw that, ended up winning the tournament. And then having Victor kind of doing the same thing, I was just thinking to myself, this is all too scary and meant to be, and then got a nice read to see how hard he hit it, and that's kind of all I was worrying about was the pace. Yeah. The accuracy, I'm not going to vary too much, left or right by 3 or 4 feet, but speed was the biggest component, and, I ended up hitting it with perfect speed and went right in.
I said this Saturday night doing post-game on SiriusXM that, he's a cool cat. I mean, he really is. If you go back to the players, and after he didn't win that playoff against Rory McIlroy, he went into the media center and was very thoughtful, and he was very introspective, and he gave the media just a full view of what had transpired and kind of his approach. And he was already having a good season. He had been 3rd at the Sony Open. He had finished 2nd at the Cognizant Classic at PGA National. So he was already in good form. But the Players it's an elevated stage. And then you get to a U.S. Open, and that is, the biggest of them all. And that's why when players win, and whoever that player is, there's a reaction from people who are currently playing at the highest level, and those who know what it's like to be at the highest level. So here's just a little sampling of players literally through the generations in terms of their reaction. Mark Calcavecchia, last time I bogeyed 5 of the first 6 holes, I think I shot 83. And that was Houston. It sure wasn't at Oakmont, the U.S. Open. Unreal stuff. Congrats, bro. Tom Watson, an 8-time major winner. What a historic finish after a really bad luck start today. You showed real guts. Congratulations, JJ Spaun, National Open champion. And then finally, Justin Thomas. Holy, that was insane. I don't know if that is a complete sentence. A lot of fragmentation in there, but we get the point, no doubt about it. And the other part about this championship is that there are a lot of players who don't have a chance before they've hit a ball. And we've heard the different algorithms that players have applied. Brooks Koepka, Jack Nicklaus used to say it, put the red 18 flags on the property and you're eliminating a lot of people. Well, Data Golf, which is always doing real-time updates on win probability, at 3:40 in the afternoon, after JJ Spaun had bogeyed 5 of his first 6 holes, posted this. This was in the aftermath. His win probability bottomed out at 1.4% at 3:40. He was two over for the championship, 5 over on the day, 4 back of both Sam Burns and Adam Scott. At 6:33, he was still 4 back. He was through 11 holes, and his win probability was 1.8%. Then he birdied 4 of his last 7 holes to win the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open not only tests your resolve, it chips away at your psyche. And even though Tyrrell Hatton, he does that, whether he's playing in the Zurich Classic of New Orleans with a teammate or whether he is at the U.S. Open, he cloaks himself in a level of martyrdom that makes you think, like, literally, why me? I mean, it's full Andy Dufresne. But what JJ Spaun did yesterday was Mike McDermott hanging around. He's got alligator blood from the movie Rounders. He just kept hanging around. When the time came for him to hit 2 of the most remarkable tee shots you will see, don't care who it was, under those circumstances, tee shot on 17, tee shot on 18, roadmap bomb putt made on the 18th green in Oakmont, you are in U.S. Open lore. That's why this game, that's why sports is the greatest reality television show that we have. When we continue here on this Monday on 5 Clubs, all the other guys that leave the greater Pittsburgh area last night going, if, we're going to go through all of them. Plus, some other notables, in particular the Masters champion and the PGA champion. It is a Monday edition. We thought we might be starting at 11 o'clock on NBC and Peacock because that was going to be the plan if there was a playoff. And it sure as heck looked like there was going to be. And then Spaun happened. We're back with you, Monday edition, Golf Channel, and on SiriusXM's Channel 92 right after this. Back in this Monday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. You can also listen. It is Channel 92 on SiriusXM's PGA Tour Radio. In this segment brought to you by Golf Pride. If you were watching, and I know you were intently, that final round of the U.S. Open, you watched all 4 days. If you're watching right now and you saw more players with Golf Pride grips, it was great to see that Align Max, which is the new grip, which I've got on my clubs. And they are the most trusted grip in golf. It doesn't matter what level. I played in a member guest last weekend. Everybody's got Golf Pride. Why wouldn't they? They are the best grips globally in the world. Let's show you the leaderboard, the final leaderboard, because when you looked at it with 90 minutes to go, it seemed like the first page, they were all 1 over par. And JJ Spaun managed to get into the red at 279 total. Robert McIntyre, what he did coming down the stretch and the way that he played bogey-free, including making those birdies on 14 and 17 and piping his tee shot on 18. Come on, that's big boy stuff. Victor Hovland, he battled. That's another major championship that he has been in contention. 2022 Open Championship, 2023 PGA, 2024 PGA, and now add a real chance at the 2025 U.S. Open. Cameron Young, good to see him back. This was somebody who was so close at Southern Hills a couple of years ago, and he's been meandering, but his form is coming around, and he was in the mix. And Tyrrell Hatton, for all the histrionics, he hit some fantastic shots and then got dealt a tough break where he drove it on 17. Carlos Ortiz was making his 10th major championship start. He's missed the cut in 7 of them. Where did that come from? John Rahm posted 4 over, and you're going, they're not going to retreat that much, are they? But to his credit, he battled. He gets a top 10, so good back-to-back major championship results for him. Scottie Scheffler, putter kind of deprived him, but I think more importantly than that, the driver, the inability to play enough from the fairway had as much to do with it as the short misses, of which he had a bushel full of putts missed from 5 feet and in. Sam Burns was your 54-hole leader. He shot 78 in the final round. And then Ben Griffin just keeps piling up productivity and points. And Ben Griffin is plowing his way in all likelihood to possibly being outfitted in red, white, and blue for the United States and the Ryder Cup. Let's go through these guys, because all of them really, you could say, had a legit chance. And let me just start kind of at the bottom there with the guy who finished tied for 7th, because that was Sam Burns, who was the 54-hole leader. There was nothing he did in particular on the outward 9 that I thought displayed, an abject level of wobbliness. I mean, I thought he was, maybe a little unnerved. The 3-putt on 2, he makes 3 bogeys going out. He hit a very, very poor tee shot on 9 into the deep fescue, was able to play it back to the fairway and gave himself a chance to actually save par, made bogey. The 11th hole was very debilitating for him because he made double there, and he then turned around and then he bogeyed 12. And then he had a pretty good chance on 13, left it just short, so he had a little short, kind of little chip shot that was kind of up the hill with a little bit of break from right to left. Could have made it. I thought the short miss for birdie on 14 really stung because Sam Burns doesn't miss those putts. And then the 15th hole happened. And on 15, he hit a reasonably good drive, but that hole is reflective of the amount of tilt on that property. And that when the golf course was constructed, they didn't build up certain areas of the land. First of all, they were using horses. And so it was like, well, we're going to use the land and it's going to be reflective of the way this land flows. And that's why you have so many greens that actually run from back to front as opposed from front to back as opposed from back to front. And 12 is a perfect example of that. You try to be on the high side, everything's going to gather down to the low. And 15 is indicative of that as well. And so he drove it in the fairway on the low side. But that low side, you know what's gathering down there? Water. Water is going to run to the low point. And so he found himself in a place where he thought he might be able to get some relief from casual water. And he appealed to one USGA official. And then he appealed to another, well within his bounds to do that. And both of them said, no, we think you need to play it from the condition you're going to need to play it from, which was right here. And then he kind of smothered it to the left of the green, into the gunch. Next thing you know, he's made a double, and you're going, oh my. Now he's going to need to make a couple birdies just to come in. Kyle Porter from Normal Sport actually, like moments after Sam Burns struck that shot, went over to where that's his divot. And you can see Kyle, and he's not stomping down in a demonstrative way. He's simply just stepping where Sam Burns' ball was. And you can see, you know, a fair amount of water coming up. And again, this is a call that has to be made by the United States Golf Association. And their call was, you're going to have to play it from there. And to Sam Burns' great credit, when this was over, when he met the media, look, he made it abundantly clear that his position was he thought that he was entitled to find a drier area. And it wasn't going to be appreciably better, but better than the condition where the ball was, where he ultimately had to play from. That was his undoing. And then you can go beyond him. You can go to the guys who were out in front of him, because Sam Burns was the 54-hole leader and he was in the last group. Tyrrell Hatton. Tyrrell Hatton is a cat on a hot tin roof, and like I said, when you watch him play golf, you think that every break he's getting is the worst break bestowed upon any player who's ever played elite golf, ever. And that can be a little fatiguing. It also, at the same time, can be mildly entertaining to very entertaining. And when he got up to the 16th tee, he hit a absolutely fantastic long iron shot. He hit 4-iron, and Scottie Scheffler, in a couple of groups in front of him, hit 5-wood. And he gives himself a great chance to make a birdie there, and you're going to 17, where it is, if you hit a BB, you might be able to chase it onto the front of the green. And then you got a real chance to make another birdie, and you're going, well, he's going to be the guy who's going to get to level par. He doesn't make the birdie putt on 16. And then on 17, he hit it short and right, and it did not get down into the bunker. It's on the downslope in the deep rough, and you're going, okay, he's going to stand on his head here now, and now he's got to elevate the ball in front of this basically wall of sod, which is on the other side of the bunker. This is going to be hard. He couldn't do it. And then he was put in a position where he is just trying to make a 3 on 18 to just match what Bob McIntyre had done, and he couldn't do it. And so here's another guy, the attrition, the end of this championship, he succumbs. Not in a way that you go, well, that's really dubious. It was tough. It was tough to watch. And there were others as well, including Adam Scott, who just kind of was hanging there, and it just kind of came unglued a little bit late. And even though he made what I thought was a gritty, gutty, wow, Sam Burns is making double on 11, he manages to scratch out a bogey, and you're going, all right, he's hanging in this thing. And then it just got too much for him late, and he wound up succumbing as well. That's what this championship does. And I know that there is a lot of bemoaning and hand-wringing, and my gosh, do they know what they're doing? Yes, they know what they're doing. I find it confounding that a lot of people take shots at the USGA as if, you know what, you guys are a bunch of amateurs and you're trying to conduct, one of the most important championships in the world. Let me just end that type of narrative immediately. They are anything but amateurs. They are experts when it comes to golf course setup. And it's not to say that, like so many others who do these setups of these major championships, don't make mistakes. These are living, breathing environments that they are trying to do something that the other three majors don't really have to do to the degree that they do, which is walk the line. And you know what walking the line means? That it's stressful and that it can get to where, oh my gosh, we may be leaning in the direction where we're crossing the line in the other direction. And they've had those moments. But the U.S. Open is supposed to be about the lone survivor. And no, it is not to embarrass these best players. It is to test them in the ways that the other threes in total really don't do. Augusta National is not a fair fight. They have a stage that's unlike any other. And we can lean on the historical inward nines of whether it's Nicklaus in 86 shooting 30, coming home at 46, or Tiger in 97 after shooting 40 going out and shooting 30 coming in because of 13 and 15. And the PGA Championship is not as resistant to par, and they've kind of struggled to some degree with their rota and their identity. Is it U.S. Open Light? And then the Open Championship, the ground game is the prevailing component and dynamic that we see that in America we don't get to really enjoy or play. So they have that. The U.S. Open has a responsibility to give you what you hope and kind of demand of them. Test them to the limits. And it's not just the physical test. It's chipping away at the psyche of all these players to where they do things that you go, wow, I'm unaccustomed to seeing Rory McIlroy tomahawk an iron, and then also toss another club, and then it ricochets off his bag and he catches it, and all of a sudden we got a meme for life. We're going to get to Rory, and we're going to get to Scottie Scheffler as well, because they are the two biggest stars, best players in the game, and they had distinctly different types of weeks in every way, because the U.S. Open, like I said, does test you. And I think Rory is being tested in ways way beyond what those 4 rounds were going to require of him. And Scottie Scheffler only reaffirmed what we already know about him. Until his last breath on the last hole, my God, he's gonna fight. We continue with you this Monday edition of 5 Clubs Golf Channel and on PGA Tour Radio. That is Sirius XM. Back with you right after this. Back in on a Monday. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. And please listen as well if you're mobile out there. It is Channel 92. That is PGA Tour Radio on Sirius XM. And this segment is brought to you by Peter Millar. Everything that I have worn for the last 15 years has been Peter Millar. And by the way, this Bingham soft coat jacket available right now, I'm not being hyperbolic here. It's the favorite thing I've ever worn. And I have like 5,000 favorite things from them. I ordered another one, and it's like, why? I don't know, because I love it so much. If you are traveling and you need a jacket that look like, you know what, I'm going to pull it out of my suitcase and I've got to go to a little cocktail hour, this Bingham soft coat from Peter Millar, it is money. Okay, Scottie Scheffler. Scottie Scheffler was the overwhelming favorite in the U.S. Open. He had odds that we have not seen since Tiger. And because his start was what it was, it didn't change the sharps' perspective on him. And I'm talking about the betting gurus. They still remained steadfast that he should be the favorite. And his odds got a little bit shorter as Sunday progressed because he wasn't going away. But yet he was also depriving himself of getting closer because he did something over the course of the 4 days which kept him from really putting his hot breath on the back of these leaders. and that was short misses and 3-putts. And he had a bushel full of 3-putt greens. He had 5 misses inside of 5 feet. And if you look at some of his numbers, he was 48 strokes gained off the tee. He was 53rd in fairways hit. He was 10th in strokes gained approach, which, you know, it's fine. It's good. He's usually first, second, or third. So it was still good, but not great. He was 23rd in greens hit in regulation. So yes, the short misses were a big part of it. But for me, it was more the fact that I thought it was kind of summed up by the fact that he drove it into the church pews on the 3rd tee 3 out of the 4 days. And the left miss, which has been the predominant miss for Scottie Scheffler. It is great that you can eliminate one side of the golf course, but that has been persistent for him over the course of 2025. But one of the reasons why there's so much admiration for him is that he didn't just fold tent. He didn't say, you know, it ain't just going to happen. He did all the things that you do, including making a 2-putt par on 15 from 10 feet 3 inches to keep hope alive. And then he goes on to 16, hits a 5-wood, and he's got about 40 feet. He makes par there, and you go, okay, you got to make 3 on 17. And then he gets kind of a break because he gets relief. Then he chips it up there, and it runs by the hole about 7 feet. Then he makes it. And then he hits a tee shot to the right, and he's got to pitch out, and you're going, all right, you're probably going to give a shot back as opposed to maybe post the clubhouse leader and separate yourself from Jon Rahm, which he wasn't able to do. But that top 7 finish, that's Scottie in a nutshell, because he can't help himself. Whatever was deficient, he's going to try to fight through those deficiencies to give himself just even a puncher's chance late, and that is incredibly admirable. Now, the other big story from this past week, and it's a persistent story that goes back to the PGA Championship, because coming off having won the Masters tournament, which was the ultimate Grand Slam coronation for Rory McIlroy, it was going to be a magic carpet ride through the balance of the year. And was he going to be unburdened? And did that mean that starting at Quail Hollow, his happiest of haunts, that he was going to be full flight? I didn't buy that. I didn't buy the idea that you can do what he did, which took over a decade to do. Any major, not to mention that major, which meant the career Grand Slam, and suddenly go, okay, you just ascended to a place, one, you've never seen before in the sense that the Grand Slam had not been achieved by anybody in a quarter century, and 2, you hadn't won a major championship since August of 2014. And Rory did speak late Saturday, and then he spoke again yesterday, and he said exactly what I have tried to be analogous about when it comes to what it was that he was trying to do. And here is just a little quote from Rory McIlroy. He said, look, I climbed my Everest in April, and I think after you do something like that, you got to make sure that you make your way back down, and you've got to look for another mountain to climb. And Open at Portrush is certainly one of those. He didn't just get to the summit of Everest. It felt like on that Sunday at Augusta National, he was ascending without an oxygen tank. And the truth is, we needed one as well, because I thought I was going to expire when he did what he did on 13, and then compounded it by making a bogey on 14. And then he slings it around the corner on 15, and you're going, okay, we're alive again. And then what happened on 18, and you're going, I don't know I have what it takes to be able to survive this playoff. All those things considered, it doesn't absolve him of things that we think that he's displayed over the last, 6 weeks. And that gets to this unusual and interesting relationship that elite players have with the media. There is no real responsibility to speak, but as a star, there seems to be this unwritten incumbent responsibility to speak to the media. And here is what I will say about what he said on Saturday. And he said, I'm kind of frustrated with you guys. And then he kind of hedged and he said, but not you specifically. I've said this plenty of times, and I'll say it again right here. I have no idea. I have no idea what it's like to live in that headspace. Do I absolve petulance and stubbornness and maybe some moodiness that maybe could be prevented? Look, my perfect game in life got broken up years ago, and here he is living in the most public way, and I don't know at the end of the day what he might be dealing with. For all of the self-talk and all of the talk that he has had for years with Bob Rotella, I don't know what chapter Bob Rotella says to him when it's, okay, here's what you do after you've completed all your dreams. I don't know that. And it reminds me of one of my favorite lines in a really, really beautiful, romantic, and sweet movie, A Beautiful Mind, when Ed Harris's character says to the bewildered and bipolar Russell Crowe's character, John Nash, you know, John, conviction is usually reserved for those left on the sidelines. I'm on the sidelines in the grand scheme of things. And like I said, I think that most importantly, Rory is such an asset to men's professional golf that it benefits the game when he does speak. And overwhelmingly, he speaks as much as anybody. And when he does, he gives. He gives introspection. He gives thoughtfulness. He gives righteousness, which at times he comes back and he goes, you know what? Let me amend that position. And you know what? I love an evolving opinion because it means you've learned a little bit more about your own perspective. Give him a little bit of time. And like I said, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't be frustrated or a little torqued off or thinking he's being, you know, a little bit petulant. And like I said, have I experienced some of that in my life? Yeah. Stubbornness, guilty. I also know this. When Brady or Mahomes or MJ or LeBron or Steph, when they won the most important thing, you know what they did? They disappeared for months. Golf doesn't allow that, particularly when you win the first major and it's completing the career Grand Slam, because he has other obligations to get back on the horse. Does it seem like maybe stepping away and exhaling might be beneficial? Maybe, but he doesn't have that luxury. So he will trudge on and he will find his equilibrium because he generally always does. And like I said, I don't know what it's like to be in that space. And it doesn't mean that I'm not capable and willing to be critical, but I also know that what he's dealing with are things that maybe we're not even fully aware of. And by the way, the whole thing at the PGA, that might have chafed him a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's really the rub as to why he's been a little bit torqued off for the last 6 weeks. He heads on to the Travelers. And Portrush might be the elixir that he needs more than any other. And I also think that when he gets to Bethpage and he can get confrontational, which on occasion that responds to him and he responds to it, I think that you will get fully focused, fully engaged Rory. We come back, some final thoughts, set up a Tuesday on 5 Clubs, and also a little look ahead to Wednesday because a very important major in the women's game at a site that will be the host of a men's major soon enough in 2027. We are back on 5 Clubs on a Monday right after this. Back in with a couple minutes to go here on a Monday here on 5 Clubs Golf Channel. Also, PGA Tour Radio, that is Channel 92 on Sirius XM. And this segment brought to you by Pinehurst. It's the cradle of American golf. And they've got the cottages at number 8. They got the new clubhouse and restaurant soon enough at Pinehurst number 10. And they're an anchor site for the U.S. Open, and they nailed it last year. I mean, nailed it. And it was announced they've got the double coming in 2029, the women and then the men. And in back-to-back years, and I made a point of seeing the presentation of Oakmont, and they nailed it as well. And they have obviously as much history, more so now with their 10th U.S. Open being conducted at that great Western Pennsylvania country club that is a brute. It is brawny. It is the ultimate psychological and physical examination. And if you look at some other players, some players who didn't even play the weekend, and I'm talking about Dustin Johnson and Cam Smith and Joaquin Niemann and Sepp Straka, who's missed all 3 cuts in the majors for all the great stuff that he has done this year, and Phil Mickelson, who made late bogeys, made late doubles. He was at 4 over, and suddenly he's 8 over, and he misses the cut by a shot, and is that it for one of the great players of all time? But when you go back to the top of the leaderboard, it kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the refrain and the narrative that we're hearing as it relates to the NBA Finals, like, markets. Indiana and Oklahoma City, like, have we been really reduced to that the jersey matters more than the excellence of the athletes inside of those jerseys? Because Carlos Ortiz had never been here before. And it had been a long, long time since Tyrrell Hatton, and Victor Hovland has shown the ability to get in the mix late, and Adam Scott had been a while. If you stick around long enough, not only does the U.S. Open show up, it shows up in a way that only amplifies what it is. It's last man standing. Its identity is intact. It delivered. Tomorrow, Justin Tupper on a great project called Cobb's Creek, and Brendan DeYoung in studio as well. Have a great Monday. We will see you tomorrow. For all of us here on 5 Clubs, have a great day.